Thanks to our nearly endless creativity, people have created numerous fictional worlds throughout the years which have incited wonder in millions. For example, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Warhammer, Pandora, etc., etc. The list is very long. And in recent times, one that has inspired a lot of wonder in animal enthusiasts, especially the marine kind, is Subnautica, a game based around the fictional world Planet 4546b, which is an ocean world covered extensively by shallow and deep oceans, and then a few islands and polar regions. It's famous for its crazy and biodiverse aquatic animals that have taken on a life of their own, no pun intended, inspiring YouTube videos, toys, and more. And while I'm definitely not in any way questioning the magic of Subnautica, I do think we tend to forget about the specialness of our own oceans and seas that are extremely crazy in their own right, and in my opinion, give Subnautica a run for its money. Not to mention the fact that there is still so much more to explore and discover, with the majority of the ocean barely being explored. However, from what little we do know, it's clear that aquatic animals can be very strange. They can be grand, tiny, dangerous, harmless, and everything in between. And it turns out that in a way, we already have our own very own Subnautica, as there is one small sliver of ocean out there that is so biodiverse and rich in sea life that it's often been referred to as the last paradise on Earth, the Amazon of the ocean, and the heart of the Coral Triangle. But its real name is perhaps even more grandiose than that, as it means the Four Kings, as I am talking about Raja Ampat, the closest thing we have to a real-life Subnautica. Located in eastern Indonesia, Raja Ampat is an extensive archipelago that covers an area similar to Africa's largest lake, Lake Victoria, which might sound small then, but the archipelago stretches out for about 70,000 square kilometers, encompassing over 1,500 small islands, cays, and shoals. And as one of its nicknames points out, it also forms part of the Coral Triangle, an extremely rich body of tropical water that is home to hundreds of reef-building coral species, is an intersection to numerous major currents, and home to a multitude of biomes, which is all part of the reason why Raja Ampat is unusually chock full of aquatic life, just as Planet 4546b is. And another part of why it's so rich in animals is something you don't hear very often: us. Because people have taken surprisingly good care of this paradise, and strict laws are enforced to try to preserve this one-of-a-kind underwater world. And as a result of this, it is the one place in the world that you will find over 75% of the world's hard coral species, which for the record, outnumber Subnautica's coral diversity by 120 to 1. And you'll also find more than 1,500, possibly 1,800, species of reef fish, which is much more than the game's 31 standard fish species. And for comparison, this even beats out Australia's famed Great Barrier Reef in diversity, even though the Great Barrier Reef is about 5 times larger. Oh, and it also beats out the entire Caribbean, which is 38 times larger. So yeah, Raja Ampat has really turned up the dial on life. And what's quite surprising about this is that despite the mind-boggling nature of this ecosystem, it was only quote-unquote discovered in 1990. Now, as far as we know, humans have been present in this area for some 50,000 years. But the foreign and scientific world only realized something special was going on here after a Dutch diver in 1990 had come searching for sunken ships. And instead of finding said ships, found an underwater region that he realized was like no other he's seen before, leading him to spread the word on its existence, and bringing Raja Ampat into the spotlight for the first time. And since then, it has become quite the popular diving spot in order to see all of its inhabitants. Those reef fish I briefly mentioned are a big part of the attraction, as in Raja Ampat you'll find just about every size, shape, and color of fish, each occupying their own niche. You have things like abundant gobies, damselfish, and wrasses, all the way to the largest non-shark fish on Earth, like the mola mola, or oceanic sunfish, a very odd, vertically built fish that really does look like it could have escaped Subnautica, and has been known to weigh over 1 ton, and in some cases up to 2.7 tons in weight, which is, for perspective, equal to a decently sized rhino. And again, this is a strange, vertically built fish we're talking about. It's been noted to be a generalistic feeder that flaps its massive fins in unison to create propulsion across the water at efficient, but albeit fairly slow speeds, less than an average person's walking speed, to be specific. While then on the flip side, you also have the speedsters like the sailfish and marlin that have been clocked at 68 to 82 miles per hour at top speeds, so faster than most people can throw a baseball. And though hard to believe that they are fish, Raja Ampat is also home to a boatload of eels as well, who in themselves are also very highly diverse here, seeing that you have genera like the small garden eels that stick out from the ground like plants, waiting for drifting zooplankton to enter their mouths. Whereas you also then have the giant moray eels, which is the much more voracious eel, let's say, being a 10-foot ambush hunter, who have also been compared to real-life xenomorphs for their hidden second set of jaws that shoot forward to drag prey to the depths of their stomachs. Sounds frightening, yes, but they aren't the only noodle-shaped animal to watch out for, seeing that the highly venomous sea kraits are in abundance here too. Though that being said, they are generally considered to be not dangerous towards humans, but they definitely could be. The point is, though, there is a lot going on in Raja Ampat, and where there is coral, you will find an abundance of other life. And while we tend to think of coral as being a feature for rather shallow water, in Raja Ampat it can be quite extensive, with most of the major shelves extending up from about 30 meters or 100 feet below the surface. In other words, kind of like a 10-story building. Well, then there are others that are thought to possibly extend for 300 feet or 91 meters below the surface. So basically the height of the Statue of Liberty, but instead of being constructed by copper sheets, it's made up of billions to perhaps 1 trillion coral polyps. So yeah, it's no surprise there is so much life here. We're drawn to the shelter and food that the reefs provide. And one group also drawn here, unsurprisingly, includes one of the kings of the oceans, sharks. Dozens of species of sharks have been identified in Raja Ampat, some of them being endemic to the area, such as the Raja Ampat epaulet shark, which is also known as the walking shark, as it uses its pectoral and pelvic fins to pretty much walk across the seabed, and they can even survive in tide pools for an extended amount of time. The highly strange and textured wobblegongs are extremely common here as well, with their intricate camouflage proving extremely effective in the coral reefs, where they lie in wait to ambush passing fish, utilizing surprisingly powerful jaws and hundreds of sharp needle-like teeth to absolutely decimate their prey. But of course, as you come to expect of a lively marine place, there are plenty of more standard sharks, let's say too, such as black tips, white tips, reef sharks, nurse sharks, bamboo sharks, and more are all common residents, with the scalloped hammerheads, tiger and bull sharks, all being occasionally spotted here as well, all of which are somewhat comparable to the sand or bone shark you may encounter in Subnautica, at least from a length standpoint. Yet, these sharks are more like visitors than citizens, as they tend to only stop by during migrations, being drawn to the abundance of prey. Now, you may have noticed that I did not say great whites, and that's because the waters are just simply too hot for them, which honestly is fine by me. But as you may know, some of the other sharks, like the tiger and bull shark, are still plenty big enough to cause some issues, as they are large, highly successful predators. And though they are nightmare fuel to some animals, they actually are generally pretty safe to tourists, with shark attacks in the Raja Ampat being exceedingly rare. So not as dangerous as Subnautica's predatorial animals that pretty much just attack on sight. And the bigger animals in Raja Ampat also tend to play nicer than those you'll encounter in Planet 4546b, as the largest shark you can find here is the ginormous but friendly filter-feeding whale shark, who aren't really known to be core residents, but they are spotted in the more outer waters. And if they are close to you, it's going to be hard to miss them, as they can commonly weigh 20 tons, which is heavier than any known terrestrial animal, while they can also measure up to 60 feet in length, making them amongst the largest animals in the area, as well as the largest fish on Earth. Yet, things do get even bigger here, as the true Leviathan-class animals, so to speak, in the Raja Ampat are not sharks, but rather cetaceans or whales. So far, at least 10 different whale species have been documented, ranging from orcas to pilot whales, sperm whales, and then get this, even blue whales, who are a sight to behold, no doubt, as sperm whales and blue whales specifically are some of the largest animals on the entire planet, with the latter possibly being the heaviest animal to have ever lived, period. And the very nice thing about these guys is they have no interest in eating you, seeing that these giant baleen whales are filter feeders, while then sperm whales, who are technically apex predators, are primarily interested in hunting giant squids, with no unprovoked attack on a human swimmer ever being recorded. Unsurprisingly, they, along with the other whales, do tend to stick to the deeper parts of the Raja Ampat, which of course it has too, seeing that separate to the coral reefs, there are basins in this area that have depths over 2,000 meters or 6,600 feet, so plenty of space to swim around. But just like Subnautica, the deeper parts aren't exactly places that I am trying to swim in. No thanks. Now, similar to some of the sharks, whales are not necessarily the most common animals in this underwater Eden, but there is one species in particular that has done very well here, and is also a rather unknown type of whale, a whale called Bride's whale. And the reason why it is so frequent here compared to the other whales is that it is the only known large baleen whale that spends their entire lives in warm tropical waters, and as such, many consider it the Raja Ampat's largest full-time animal, with individuals in the area typically growing between 40 and 50 feet long. So, similar to the length of Subnautica's river prowler, well then it can also weigh up to 40 metric tons. As I said, they are baleens, which means they are also filter feeders, feeding on a variety of fish, planktonic crustaceans, and cephalopods. And just like their relatives, they're capable of producing complex vocalizations that is actually somewhat known for its unusual synthetic sound, sometimes being compared to dubstep or the sound of a transformer. But like I said, there are many different types of cetaceans here, including ones that we don't tend to think of as whales, but sure are. And that would be dolphins. These toothed cetaceans are a staple here, with 16 species being found. Albeit, they too are not frequent to the coral reefs, instead inhabiting the nutrient-rich, deeper passages that form between underwater corridors, wherein currents kick up nutrients along with the dolphins' preferred food choices, which tend to be fish, squid, and crustaceans. Of the 16 observed kinds, some of the more commonly cited have been the common bottlenose, riso, spotted, and the Indo-Pacific dolphin. However, the most plentiful by far is the energetic spinner dolphin, which is fittingly named as they are famous for their aerial acrobatics and the spins they perform while mid-air. On top of looking just awesome and being agile, dolphins and the other cetaceans are among Raja Ampat's smartest animals, having intricate social structures, complex communication, self-awareness, and in some cases even showing tool use. But that being said, they're not the only smart cookie lurking here, because octopuses are aplenty too, ranging from large, easygoing species like the day octopus to the famous and elusive blue-ringed octopus, which is well known for its powerful venom that's only about, 1,000 times more potent than cyanide, with a single bite injecting enough venom to kill 26 adults. Oh, and there is no anti-venom either, so maybe try to avoid the tiny deadly octopus. Thankfully though, these guys are quite docile, and are smart enough to usually avoid approaching humans. On top of that, you have the less deadly but equally amazing octopi, like the algae and starry night octopus, that really just go to demonstrate just how visually insane these cephalopods can be, as well as how well they would fit into Subnautica. Because honestly, if I didn't know octopuses were real, you definitely could have fooled me. And that's before even considering their very bizarre anatomy, which by the way includes bright blue blood, 3 hearts, and 9 brains that allow their tentacles to act independently. So yeah, they definitely fit the Subnautica bill. And other animals that fit into this category would be all the varying rays, such as the smaller devil and eagle rays, plus the larger reef and giant oceanic manta rays, who in extreme cases can weigh 2.4 tons and have a wingspan of 29 feet or 8.8 meters. So about the same length as London's famed double-decker Route Masters. And shocker, this great wingspan allows them to essentially fly underwater, either by flapping them a bit like a bird or undulating them in a wave-like motion. And come on, you guys cannot look at these things and tell me they do not belong in Subnautica. I mean, the game literally made their own rays as a testament to these creatures. Yet, it's not only fish here that look funky, as one of the stranger looking marine mammals lives here as well, and is also just about one of the rarest aquatic mammals on Earth. The dugong, one of the only 4 species left of the entire Sirenian order. They are closely related to all living Sirenians, but it's actually the extinct giant stellar sea cow that they share the most DNA with. A bit interesting as the stellar sea cow was giant and the dugong much smaller, with it actually being the second smallest Sirenian left, which also makes it about 3 times shorter than its extinct relative and more than 10 times lighter. However, with that said, it is still no small fry, with larger adults weighing about 1 ton and measuring up to 3 meters or 10 feet long, so still one of the Raja Ampat's larger animals. And just like its living kin, the manatee, the dugong is renowned for its docileness and gentle diet, which is pretty much made up entirely of seagrasses. Unfortunately, this also plays into making these cute goobers among the more vulnerable animals in the area. But on the bright side, they are relatively protected in Raja Ampat, and have ample grasses to feed upon. So yeah, clearly this area has become home to many walks of life, or should I say, swims of life. And as a result, every single time you explore it, you're bound to see different sights and have different experiences, a bit like Subnautica. And just like in the game, it's not only water you'll find here, because as I said, this area is also home to over 1,500 small islands, cays, and shoals that don't just enrich the coral reefs, but also bring their own game, so to speak. And just as special as the marine life is in the Raja Ampat, so are the islands themselves, as they do not look like ordinary ones, being distinct for their mushroom-shaped appearances and jagged spires that almost seem to defy gravity. And the reason for this is that these islands are composed almost entirely of limestones, which, by the way, was at one point an ancient coral reef itself, just now forced up into the sky by tectonic activity. Many of these islands are covered in lowland rainforests that stay tropical and wet year-round, and are characterized by hill and limestone forests, while then mangroves also occur as well. And you can bet that the islands of Raja Ampat draw on their very own interesting life, with the terrestrial life including a large quantity of venomous snakes, pythons, monitor lizards, spiders, boars, marsupials, and birds. Lots and lots of birds. And when I say lots, I really do mean lots. In fact, these islands have one of the highest concentrations of what are known as birds of paradise, a family whose name was coined for their exoticness and their mythical-like appearances. Turtles are also well known to the islands, using the beaches for laying eggs, and then to a lesser degree, albeit far lesser, you also have the largest reptile on the planet. In other words, the saltwater crocodile, who can be found living in river estuaries, mangrove forests, and on some of the larger islands. They are thankfully, or perhaps unfortunately depending on your perspective, very rarely encountered in the coral reefs. But it's not unheard of, and areas where they are more concentrated are usually avoided given the aggressive nature of these crocs. And of course because of the fact they have a monstrous bite that can crush bones like crackers. But with all this said, one of the most plentiful large animals and primates on these islands is us, humans, with a total population being around 66,000. The people here tend to live in small colonies and heavily rely on the local area for fishing, being allowed to do so, but also being highly regulated by the government in order to ensure fish populations stay stable. And as I said in the start, the government of Indonesia has done a surprisingly good job at protecting the closest thing we have to a real-life Subnautica. But alas, even with that, this place is now under stress. For starters, seeing that it is a part of the ocean, it is experiencing many of the negative effects that are downstream to simply existing within this body of water, such as the recent marine heat waves and higher acidity than normal, leading to the terrible and unfortunate occurrence known as coral bleaching. This has been a large problem in Raja Ampat, but thankfully it has seemed to be more resilient to it than other reefs around the world, which is sometimes attributed to the higher diversity seen in the corals here. Although there is a more recent problem which seems to be growing every day, and that is nickel mining. Yes, while the government has kept Raja Ampat on lock for a long time, and seemingly is continuing to do so to an extent, the protective grip may be loosening a bit, as nickel mining has become more common in recent years, and is posited to become possibly even more frequent as the world's need for critical minerals increases. This mining obviously causes problems, such as simply the runoff into the waters, coral erosion, and then the pollution that is harmful to both the animals on the island and those in the waters. And I really have to say that, hopefully, for a change, there is a happy ending to Raja Ampat's story, as it truly is one of a kind. Thanks for watching, and until next time.